right, dear one, beautiful. Well, we're going to go on to our third author. And I want to say, please be noting down anything you want to share. We'll do breakout groups after this next author. And this is Moren Murphy. I'm just going to remove myself for a moment here so we can get a photo of you with your book, if you want to hold it up.
So
Okay,
the Pony Express doesn't get to Mexico quite as quickly as anywhere
Mexico
else.
is a little bit different. Okay, yeah. I know that was one of the things my husband did not love about Mexico as much as we did love Mexico. Hold on a sec here. A little light situation. Okay. All right, my dear. So, Maureen. There we go. Well, I'll introduce you first, and then we'll get into the chapter. So Maureen's chapter is called Reclaiming Sacred Radiance, a healer's journey from burnout to blessing. Moren Murphy, who has a doctor of chiropractic, I know that's not what you're practicing now, but you did that for many years. Maureen guides extraordinary women who are facing creative blocks, challenging life transitions, or emotional triggers in key relationships to instead connect wholeheartedly with their guiding passion and purpose, restore their inner radiance, and confidently express themselves at home and at work. With over 3 decades experience as a holistic chiropractor, resilience coach, and mindfulness trainer, Maureen has seen firsthand how misalignment with your true self robs you of vitality. Her laser-focused methods help you get unstuck and into flow, so you can stop being mad at yourself and start feeling the joy and satisfaction of your success. Maureen lives with her beloved partner in the heart of Mexico, where she delights in writing poetry, which is a great creative outlet, learning salsa dancing, and leading retreats. Yeah. So your chapter is burnout as a catalyst for spiritual awakening. And I know it's an overlapping topic with Amy, but everybody has her own take on every single topic. And, you know, in your chapter, you describe a complete physical and emotional burnout that led to spiritual transformation. Do you want to tell us what burnout looked like for you so we can just kind of really recognize it? Because I know it's different for each person. How did you know you?
Sure, yeah. First of all, I want to thank all of the women who've already shared in the last 3 sessions. I found them all to be really moving and emotional, and I really appreciate the way you hold space for that and really bring out our tenderness and our vulnerability. Yeah, thank you, Laura.
My pleasure.
One of the hallmarks of my burnout came after prolonged years of stress and doing everything myself, right? That's one of the patterns. I think it's important for us to recognize what our patterns are that maybe started out as coping strategies, but then get us into trouble. And one of them for me was doing everything myself, not asking for help. When I felt vulnerable, I would isolate because that was easier on me. As a caring professional, I held space for a lot of people and their stories. As I tell in the book, I was also nursing my own broken heart and trying to show up for people and being an entrepreneur. And also somebody who was very robust and physical. I used physical activity as an outlet for emotion instead of pausing and letting myself feel what was happening. And so I got myself to a place where I couldn't think clearly. I couldn't stay asleep. I had a lot of anxiety, heart palpitations. My digestion was wrecked in spite of eating an impeccable diet. I was a healthcare provider, so I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I was doing everything right, being fit, being active, eating well. But there was a whole side of me that I was ignoring. And, you know, in isolation, um, you know how when you're with other people, it's harder to hide what's really going on because there's a
Yeah,
real disparity, there's a real gap. And so
right,
when you're isolated, you don't see that gap as much, right?
right.
And so I had to, really pay attention when it became increasingly difficult for me to stay asleep and to my thinking was foggy. As I detail in the book, one of the real strong things I couldn't ignore was I could palpate swollen lymph glands in my groin. And as a palpator, as a chiropractor, it's like, okay, you can't really deny this, what's going on? And I had to ask myself, why are you not seeking help? And so I had like come to myself moment. And I realized that, of course, I was afraid of a terminal diagnosis
Like cancer.
like cancer, but more than that, I realized I didn't have the will to fight for my own life. And that was the shock. It's like, oh my God, I wouldn't even show up to fight for myself.
Mm.
And so that was what really broke me out of my isolation and gave me the willingness to reach out to trusted friends and colleagues and begin the journey. Like the journey of healing begins with awareness. That's usually the first step in any transformative journey. And then what do you do with that awareness?
So when you've noticed the swollen lymph nodes
Mm-hmm.
in your groin, did you go to a doctor and what did they say?
Well, it was. I knew that it was a whole series of symptoms that could have pointed to any number of different things. And because I was in my late 30s and I was aware of my hormonal changes, I
Huh?
went to a nurse practitioner who was well known for doing blood tests and checking your hormone levels and kind of looking at the bigger picture. And she was the one who told me that I was going into perimenopause early. I was only 38,
My goodness.
and checked out my digestion and gave me herbs and different vitamins and, prescribed rest. And it was like a whole turnaround. I had to take all the irons out of the fire and just tend to the fire. And I became willing to do that.
So one of the things that I found so interesting about your story, and I knew you that, a long time ago, but I
Not at that time, you
not
didn't
at
know that,
not when
right?
this was happening, but this piece of is so interesting that you were doing taiko drumming
Mhm.
as an outlet. Can you talk about what was good about the taiko drumming and then when you had to transform your relationship to that whole
Mhm.
community?
Yeah, the taiko was an avenue of passion. It brought up passion. So if I was in my own personal life nursing a broken heart and feeling sort of like I'm dying, this was a place that grabbed me by the throat and just was like, yeah,
You
you're
hit
alive.
drums really hard like this, or do you hit with one?
You do both, and they're up sideways, they're in front of you, they're down beside you. It's very choreographic, very dance-like, and very collaborative. You're with a group, and everything is coordinated. And so that was wonderful for my little Aries fire self that wanted to be physical. I loved being in the community and learning by copying. No one's explaining anything to you. They just throw you in and go figure it out. And I liked that kind of learning. and and what was not so good about it was very hierarchical dojo school.
Okay.
And it was is very patriarchal, and our sensei used the old school techniques of humiliation and different ways ostensibly to break down your ego. And I did have an idea about that, but it was still difficult to go through it. And I remember particularly one time where I had been humiliated, and I
Oh,
went home and I was like trying to figure out why it hurt so bad and what was the difference between humility and humiliation. Why was humility so good and humiliation so bad? And I went to the dictionary
Mhm.
and looked it up. And one of the definitions was religious mortification. I looked up mortification and it said a death of a part of the body. And that's when I knew it was my ego that was feeling that it was dying through the
Okay.
humiliation. And that humility is what emerges when you're not identified with the ego,
So
right?
this is complex, because on the one hand, the dojo gave you a place where you weren't isolated. It gave you physical activity. It gave you something different than your work.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if it was the most nurturing when you were going through perimenopause.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the choice you had to make about that once you understood your physical situation a little better?
Yeah, and I would even say that the prolonged stress, both from chiropractic school and the way I handled that, like there was a lot of performance, right? And then there was performance in the dojo. And so I would say that precipitated the early onset of menopause because I had been
Oh,
running on adrenaline for so many years, um, and then having to make a choice between something that fed a part of me but really wasn't such a great fit for the kind of person I am.
yeah.
It fed a part of me but it wasn't really holistic. And so I did make the decision to leave,
Wow.
which was challenging because it was, such a hard project for me. But as soon as I did make that decision, my whole creative side opened up. So I didn't really lose that outlet and creativity. It just got even more so and more deeper and more soulful for me.
Wow.
Mhm.
And how did you know that this physical exhaustion was a soul call?
I didn't know that initially. I had to first sort of resource myself and calm my nervous system down and kind of get connected to friends again and like be in a safe place before then I could explore and listen and receive the inspiration,
Hmm.
that came to me primarily through poetry, just downloads of beautiful metaphor and story and all of that. So first there had to be this kind of safe place for me. And then, as with many of the women who've shared their journeys, they're not linear, right? For me, it unfolded under my feet as I was walking down the road. It was like I let myself be drawn to this teacher or to this training or to this, and it unfolded beautifully and organically and joyfully. Um,
Oh, I love that.
mhm,
I know that now you work with women as a soul coach, right? At
mhm.
burnout reclamation, helping people with women with burnout, helping women with career transition. What have you learned about helping other women make choices aligned with their well-being?
That's a great question. I mean, I always have tried to share whatever I learn on my own journey with people. And so, first and foremost, I just try to meet people where they are and offer acceptance and understanding. That's a little bit like what I was saying about landing in a safe place and soothing your nervous system enough so that you can be open. And then I invite people to investigate their own certainties, what they believe to be true about themselves, their situation, what's possible for them, and begin a process of looking at, what they believe is true and where did that come from? Is that something that they've been conditioned? Does it come from experience? One
Mm.
of the actual most powerful practices that changed my life, and that is the core of what I do with people in my coaching, is about perspective shifting and helping us to understand that events themselves don't hold the meaning. Meaning is what we bring to it. And each of us brings our own meaning to a situation based on our experience. As human beings, we have this gift of logic, and we start very, very young in our lives trying to understand what's happening in our lives from a logical perspective. And if we land on something that's logical, that does not mean it's the truth. Right? It just
Right.
means it's one logical interpretation of those events. But we often act like it's the truth, and then we make our story about who we are and common things like, am I worthy? Am I lovable? Am I important?
Right.
Mistakes are bad. All of these things become our unwitting um, shackles, really. And so
Totally.
the idea that in any moment I can come to this moment and pause and say, all my past experience does not bring me the truth of this moment. It's really being fully present here and now with humility. I don't know what this is about. I don't want to look at now through the lens of my past.
Right. Beautiful. Well, I'm just going to see what we've got here. We've got, if you would drop some love for Maureen in the chat, that would be amazing. We have Julia, love that, Maureen. Rachel says, Maureen, I'm so glad you found your willingness to go the distance and put your irons on the fire of your own life. The path unfolded under my feet as I was walking. Wendy, Maureen, the journey begins with awareness. Yes, you have such a powerful and needed message.
Thank you.
Is there any, while the rest of you are typing in your love, I'm going to ask Maureen, if there anything I didn't ask you that you would have liked that I did?
I guess one of the biggest turnarounds for me was recognizing how harsh I was to myself,
Mm.
and being able to um, sincerely look into my own eyes and see my own innocence,
Mm.
see, my own soul's beauty. Really, that was a special grace. I don't know how I arrived at that. You know what I mean? It was like, but such a gift to be able to come home to myself and really feel the love for my true self, not my performance self, not who I thought others wanted me to be. That was really the gift that I received.
I love that. 100%. That is so beautiful. Let's see what we've got here in the chat. Julia says, your wisdom radiates outward. Lorraine, Maureen, I love the idea of changing perspective. Lisa, I loved it's about being here and now with humility. Jackie, so important to have this awareness and choosing to deeply care for ourselves. Thank you for exemplifying this so courageously. Sheena, thank you, Maureen. I so appreciate your perspective. That has helped me shift my life. Charlene, from one Aries to another, I appreciate the energy you have to make huge changes in such a gentle way. Thank you. Kathy Bass, so many great insights on how to find our true path. Rachel, I can relate to that deeply, Maureen, how harsh I was to myself. The undoing of that has been the most wonderful act of compassion. Julia, wow, Maureen, look into my own eyes and see my own soul's innocence. Meredith, I had to start tending the fire. I like this way of describing coming home to yourself. Emil say, true love for yourself. Yes, beautiful, Maureen. Thank you. Amy. Maureen, thank you for naming that, to be able to look at myself and see grace. Your story is a gift and inspiring. Hyla. Maureen, so many gems of wisdom. Thank you for sharing your story. I love don't look at now through the lens of the past. Cynthia, inspired by reading your story. So she must have already read it. And I especially benefited from listening to your story. Oh, awesome, awesome, awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you.
May your writing path continue. Yeah. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to get ready to go into small groups. And I'm going to invite you all to think about how these stories have touched you and how you want them to support you as you go forward. What wisdom have you gained from Emilce, from Maureen, from Amy, that you can bring into your life's path, either now or in the future, or to help a loved one? I'm going to create breakout rooms. You'll have about 3 minutes each. Okay, so we'll do 3, 3, 3, and then 1 minute to get in, 1 minute to get out. So that's 12 minutes. If you have a group of 4, it might be 2 minutes each. Please pick a time keeper. And And here we go. Let me create the groups. You're going to have to accept new ways to expand and connect with other participants. Yeah. Kathy, so many great insights. I love our group of authors. Maureen, appreciating the power of women in community, sharing our aspirations to go on and lead retreats. Cool. Rachel Chase, beautiful levity and joy of sharing how grateful we are to have embraced our multifaceted selves. 100%. We're multifaceted. Maybe that's the theme. We are multifaceted. Common themes of women's soul growth. I don't want to rush you if anybody's still finishing. I'm going to give one more sec here. Jackie, I adored connecting with Rachel and Kathy. So many similarities and celebrations of this sisterhood. Super soul nutritious. Oh, I love that. Soul nutritious. Anila, so happy to be connected with such a lovely group of inspiring women. Yes, good to have you here, Anila. Cynthia, keep telling our stories. Well, I think with that, we're going to say namaste until tomorrow. We'd love to have you back for our final 6 authors, 2 sessions of 3 each. And we start at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Namaste. Bye.
Namaste.
Namaste.